Okay, we have 10 o'clock sharp and we're gonna get this party started. So welcome to the ForeFlight Fundamentals Mastering the Basics Forum and to the ForeFlight sponsored Pavilion 7 where we're here all week. I'm gonna walk through the schedule and the agenda for this session in just a moment. I wanna take a moment and introduce myself. My name's Dan Garrison. I am very privileged to be a part of the customer education team at ForeFlight. My teammate and team leader Thomas is here, and you may have already heard my colleague Jeremy, who will actually be up after this session with a short lunch break. I'll show you where that session is. He's going to be doing a power user session, but I'll just take a moment and give you a little bit about my background. I've spent a long time in teaching and learning with adults, mainly. I was in private industry for 20 years, and after that I ran a business in financial services. I have a degree in physics and also an MBA. And then I spent the last dozen years before I joined ForeFlight. Last April, I taught engineering, physics, computer science, and coached competitive robotics in 3 public high schools in the Dallas area, and had a bunch of fun. And it was actually one of my former students who came through that program and went to the University of Texas and got a computer science degree, and then did a couple of internships with ForeFlight, and now he's a senior iOS engineer with ForeFlight, and he introduced me to ForeFlight and this role, and my great friend Thomas over there. And so I've been putting my teaching and learning to work now in aviation here with ForeFlight and helping folks like you get introduced to and start learning how to use ForeFlight in your flying, which I'm doing too. I'm currently a midlife student pilot, very close to my check ride. I started flying just about a year ago, so God willing, next month I'll take and hopefully pass my check ride. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you. We appreciate you trusting us with these minutes that we're going to spend together. And here's what we're going to cover. We're going to start by welcoming you guys here to AirVenture. Anybody here for the first day today? All right, way to go. Anybody, this is your first OSH? Nice. Last year was my first and my second OSH. Do we have any veterans who have been here like many times? Okay, that's the big group here. Awesome. We're glad you're here. And wherever you are on your piloting journey or with ForeFlight, new to ForeFlight, we've worked really hard to make this valuable for all of you. What we'll do in a moment, after I go through some introductions to what's going on with ForeFlight here at AirVenture outside of this forum, we'll talk about why ForeFlight. Perhaps you're new like I was and you didn't even know what an electronic flight bag. Maybe you couldn't spell EFB like me a year ago. And then we're going to walk through a VFR cross-country scenario to let that be kind of the tour guide around ForeFlight to show us a number of the tools. It certainly won't be an exhaustive session, but if you're brand new, by the time you walk through this, and by the way, we'll get to this in a second. We're going to encourage you to maybe follow along with your device. But if you want to know what's going on with ForeFlight here at AirVenture 2025, this is a QR code that'll take you to our webpage, and it'll kind of help filter things down to what is ForeFlight doing. And this is the booth where we are. If you haven't been to Boeing Plaza yet, where all the big airplanes and jets are, you can head towards the tower, just walk out this door, hang a left, look for the tower, and then we're in the big Boeing building right in the middle of Boeing Plaza, and we're inside that building. There is air conditioning. It's quite lovely. The Boeing store is in there. We have something new too that I'll call out. I don't know, you probably can't see it. Let's move this right there. We have what you would guess I call a pop-up. It's a space that we've created for people to just come and connect. And maybe if you have product questions and want to bring your device into our booth, then I've got about 24 of my colleagues, experts in helping people troubleshoot and demo some of our new stuff. But you can come there. But if you just want to hang out, with some other aviators, we have some people coming by, there's some activities. So it's called Runway Retreat, and that's right out back. Just look for the white picket fence and the ForeFlight flags. So we're here all week. As I mentioned, this is the schedule. If you didn't get a schedule card, before you leave, come see me or Thomas, and you can get the schedule of the forums that we're going to walk through for the rest of the week. Let me just highlight what's happening today. This is the intro class, but right after this, starting at 1 o'clock, my colleague Jeremy will come and kind of pick up where I left off, and he's going to do like kind of the advanced course, and we call it power users. So you can come back from that. Another set of sessions the rest of the week. We're going to be talking about tomorrow morning what's new, basically since last year, and we're going to highlight basically some main features that have rolled out, because we're rolling out new features every single month. And I'm going to show you in just a moment where you can actually get that inside the app as well. But tomorrow will be kind of a more in-depth session on what we've added. There is also a session that I'm going to do again tomorrow called Optimizing Your iPad, which is, hey, let's take this device and get ForeFlight optimized so you're working with the iPad that you want, and we'll cover some features and settings that will help your iPad give you the most of your experience with ForeFlight. And then we'll repeat these sessions again on Friday. And then our colleague, Ryan Bolander, who works with our flight schools and education departments around the country and the world, he's going to be here giving a session on how we do teaching and learning in those environments. Okay, we do have some show specials that if you picked up one of these cards, they're highlighted on the back. There's basically, we have 20% off for anyone who's a new subscriber or upgrading to our essential or premium level plans. And that would include Jeppesen IFR charts. We have a renewal discount, which is 10% off of our premium. That's our top level subscription. And then Jeppesen has a 20% off any nav data. And then our Century Plus device, which is basically an award-winning piece of avionics, is available at the Sporties booth for 10% off. Now I'm going to put up this Wings Credit QR code. There's been a number of people that walked in since we had this up earlier. So if you are looking for Wings Credit, please scan this QR code. It's also, as I mentioned, physically above the fire extinguishers. And the way this works, just so everybody knows, this points you to a Google form that we manage, and Thomas and Jeremy back in Austin next week will take whatever sessions you have chosen and submit that after it gets audited to the FAA. So in the next several weeks, you'll be getting, and please make sure, pro tip, you must use the email that you have registered with the FAA. That's how we match things up to make sure you get the credit for being in this or any of our other Wings Credit approved courses. Now, for those of you who just want to sit back and kind of take it in and just listen to what I have to say and watch what's happening on the screen, I think that's great. The teacher in me says, hey, take notes or take out your device, because we are going to be clicking through how to use the app on the screen. Okay, it's obviously not required, but if you want to go back and re-watch and re-listen to any of our sessions, and that includes all the sessions we've done in the past, webinars, feature reviews, pro tip sessions, this is the site to go to. And within the next week or so, all the sessions from this week will be put up by our marketing team. And it'll also be on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and scrub through and maybe go back and listen to things that you have heard here again, because we're going to be touching a lot of bases. Now, this is another great place to do some learning about ForeFlight. This is new. How many of you guys have used the Discover tab in ForeFlight? Okay, just a few of you. Okay, that feature was actually brand new this time last year, but we've added something very recently inside of it called What's New. So if you want to discover what's new in ForeFlight, you go to What's New, and you can see it right there. And if you move over here, you can see we have our most recent release, version 17.7, and it has release notes. That blue text, you can click on it, and it will open up and say, here's exactly what's been added in this latest release, and it has our full release history there. You can scroll up and go back in time to keep track of what's new. Now, over to this other feature set in Discover, we have an events section, and the EAA and the AOPA have partnered with us to feed us their event data, and then we place it on this scrollable map in the middle that you can pan and zoom around and look for maybe your next pancake breakfast or EAA meetup. And those, like I did here, I just zoomed in on Osh, and you can see over on the right side, there are event details for AirVenture. So all the EAA and AOP events are there. We're trying to give you a tool to connect with other aviators and be a part of what's going on wherever might be local to you. This is one of my favorite parts of Discover, is there's education built into the app, because we have a ton of free content, webinars and videos that you can sort over here in these different categories. So do we have anybody who's kind of just getting started checking out ForeFlight, or maybe you're a new pilot like me? This is a great place to go. You can just tap on that and we will start feeding you some content to click on. Like right here, you go, hey, I want to get started with ForeFlight. There's a webinar to help you do that. Or if maybe you've been around a while and you want to go look up for some new features, see how we do logging and debriefing. I'll touch on that before we're done today. We have a brand new version of how to use our track logs and debrief those to improve your flying. So there's tons and tons of content to go searching through there. Okay, here's something brand new for those who aren't aware. Jeremy and Thomas and myself conduct in-person, on-site intensive trainings for military pilots. We serve general aviation, business aviation, and military pilots with our education team. And the military sends their pilots to our Austin office, and we train them for 3 days intensively, kind of a train-the-trainer session. And we found those to be very useful. We've gotten tons of positive feedback, so we decided to kind of take a step into the GA pilot world with an in-person training to gauge some interest. And so this session is really the first time that we've offered that, and you can see right here, we're going to be doing that this October. And do we have anybody from Central Texas here? Anybody? Okay, well, it's usually hot a lot in Texas, but in October, I think it's Jeremy who said there's 6 or 7 weeks when it's not miserably hot. And so this is part of the reason we picked it, and it turns out that's a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the weekend after that is the F1 race in Austin. So if you're inclined to come check this out, I do want to give you a heads up that this is almost sold out. I think we have 1 seat left, so we're not trying to annoy y'all with a teaser. What we do want is, if you're interested at all, take a scan of the QR code, and you can register anyway, because we're going to use that interest to gauge the enthusiasm for whether we do these more in the future. And if we do, the people that go ahead and register, we have your email, we'll be pushing that out to you first. All right? So we're calling that the workshop as part of ForeFlight's pilot proficiency program. Okay, so we're going to get started here. For those of you who are anybody who's like brand new to ForeFlight. Okay, a number of you, great. So we're going to talk about why ForeFlight. And I would argue that in order to answer that question, we have to start with this question, which is, what is an electronic flight bag? A year and a half ago, I never heard that term. So we're going to talk about first, not what is it, but what is it not? All right, who's done planning like this before? Okay, good for you, congratulations. We are not here to replace the planning process and those tools. I've done all the paper planning. I've held my FAR aim and opened it and tabbed it and used a sectional and a plotter and everything you see here, the whiz wheel. jet charts, a paper logbook, on and on. The whole idea, when our founders, Jason Miller and Tyson Wise, it was back in 2007, they met on an online aviation forum. We're like, hey, you know what'd be great is we need to give some people some digital tools. They were pilots and also software guys who thought maybe it'd be great to not carry around a 40-pound flight bag one day. So they started a web page. That's how ForeFlight started. 1 year later, the iPhone opened, Steve Jobs started the App Store. And so they were like, hey, why don't we go put some more on the iPhone? And so 2008, the App Store was born, and ForeFlight was the very first aviation app in the App Store, and we've been there ever since, helping create the electronic flight bag category. We're obviously not the only ones out there, but the idea was basically this, right? Let's put all of that stuff that goes in the big flight bag and all the resources that it takes to plan a flight, which is not a simple thing, and put it in a place that can give you all of this, right? We have airport information, maps and charts, IFR procedures. You can have a central place for documents. You can keep a digital logbook. You can certainly do your filing and briefing, and there's tons and tons of weather data. So all of this, the basic concept of ForeFlight is all of this in one place. Now, we're not saying that you shouldn't learn how to understand and use the tools that go inside of the black box known as an electronic flight bag. But we do, and the mission has always been to make flying safer, more efficient, and more enjoyable, and do that with this device all in one place. So it's really an amazing enterprise that has come to life over the last decade and a half plus at ForeFlight, because we have pilots designing apps for pilots, and not just GA pilots, but business aviation pilots, commercial aviators. A lot of people don't know that commercial pilots on their flight deck use our apps like Flight Deck Pro. American Airlines has 15,000 pilots using our products. And so we take all of that, and we're always working to optimize how we design apps and tools for pilots, right? And the way we do that, is with a huge quality assurance team that is working literally 24/7 on frequency around the world to give all of our users the most utility and the highest productivity, and taking any issues and solving those, whether it's a feature that we've already rolled out or a new feature that we're about to roll out, like dynamic procedures. We will touch on that briefly in a moment, but the collaboration that we do as well with industry partners and government regulatory agencies helps us really try to stay on the bleeding edge of what is going to be best for pilots, no matter what kind of flying you do, what kind of aircraft you're in, what kind of mission you're on. Now, what I love is clearly aviation is a space that is high stakes all the time, right? Even if you're a VFR pilot just looking to go out on a cross country and enjoy being above the clouds, it's still mission critical products that you're going to be depending on. And we have mission committed people standing behind those. And it's one of the first things that I experienced. I have to slide this story in here just to give you a sense. Do we have anybody who's not used ForeFlight before? Okay, not too many, okay. Who's emailed team@foreflight.com before to get some help? Anybody? Well, if you haven't, I'm gonna encourage you, if you ever have a problem, do that, because the kind of support that we offer with this high-tech product is ultra high touch. And I'll tell you how I got the first sense of that. I was at our military training a year ago, April, and it was Friday afternoon. I was headed home back to Dallas, and I was standing in the airport with hundreds of people. It was raining, and flights were getting canceled. And here comes a commercial pilot, and he was on the phone, walking towards me like this. And he had his uniform, and he was carrying his bag, and I was on the phone too. And he got about like right here, and he saw my ForeFlight logo, and he got off the phone, and he turned like this, and he goes, "Do you work for ForeFlight?" And I was like, "Hold on. Yes." And he goes, "You guys are awesome." And I was like, man, I was not on my bingo card on a Friday afternoon, and I'm like, cool. I didn't have anything to do with that, but thank you very much. I don't know how many times you guys have had somebody stop and give you some props like that for some software, but I don't think that that's just a marketing line that you see there. The fanatical pilot support that we bring to each and every person who is a part of the ForeFlight user world is going to experience that. So if you haven't ever tried out our support, then do it. And all that time, we built a company that's now based in Austin, where it was founded, like I said, in 2007. We're all over the world now with offices in Houston. We're up in Portland, Maine. We have a group in Odense, Denmark. We're also in Australia. And I think it says right here, about a third of our employees are active flying pilots. Many of my colleagues are CFIs and CFIIs and former fighter pilots. And there's just an extremely deep talent pool that is being put to use to build the products that you're using or might consider using in your cockpit. Now, we did join Boeing in 2019. That is something that is in the process of kind of changing. If you want to learn more about the acquisition that's in process and us being separated from Boeing, we all think it's a positive thing. Come see us at our booth and we'll unpack that for you. Okay, so we're going to dive in now to this VFR cross-country scenario. Okay, and it's just a cross-country flight that we're going to start and look at my home airport in McKinney, north of Dallas. We're going to plan it out to Little Rock, Arkansas, and look at the tools that we need to do that. And then hopefully we'll have a few minutes for some Q&A before we leave, and we can do some demos if that's needed. All right, so like every good pilot, we have a checklist for what we're going to do in planning this cross-country scenario. So we're going to start, we're going to get ourselves oriented, then we're going to do some pre-flight and weather like we would do in any flight we plan. We'll do some route planning, we'll make some adjustments to that route, then we'll look at some en route features and finish up with some post-flight tools. So that's where we're headed. And the first thing I want to do is kind of give us a picture of what it looks like. Who's done this recently? Do some paper planning, anybody? Okay, good for you. This is me doing the plan for the flight that I'm about to show you in ForeFlight. And I have my paper nav log, I've got my E6B calculator, obviously I need a sectional, actually I need a couple of sectionals, I've got the whiz wheel up there, I've got to have a weather forecast, and I've done this a number of times in my training. So what we're going to do is take this process and look at how we can replicate it, not necessarily replace it, although once you start doing it with ForeFlight, you go, wow, this happens a lot faster. But this is where we're headed, is to build a plan that's similar to this process, okay? Now, as we go, if you care to follow along on your device, you can pull out your iPhone or your iPad, certainly not required, but you need to keep your eyes on the little tap icon and look for the pink agenda, the magenta boxes that I will be directing your attention to on the screen, okay? So the first thing we're gonna do is learn how to kind of get around in the app, right? So we're going to put it in portrait orientation. This is how a lot of pilots fly with ForeFlight. Whatever iPad you have, maybe you have an iPad mini. Who uses the iPad mini in their airplane? Yeah, that's the most popular one. Some people may have a little bit more room for a bigger one, but regardless of which size iPad you have, ForeFlight is going to orient things like this. You're going to have this mini down here. You're going to have these feature buttons available, but you can also obviously use it in landscape orientation. And I want to compare these two because you get a little bit more real estate over here with the landscape orientation. So I like to fly with one of my iPads in my lap in landscape orientation, and then I have my iPad mini in the portrait orientation with a suction cup on the windshield, and that's how I do it. But either way, you've got these two sets, the sets of feature buttons at the bottom. That's how you get around in ForeFlight. So I'm going to start into this pre-flight airport and weather work, and we're going to stay in landscape mode. Okay, and right here, you can see this is the Maps tab zoomed all the way out. And you can see we have a digital representation of the globe, and I'm going to just do some zooming here and some panning, which I'm doing with one finger. That red dot that you see there is me panning around, 2 fingers. I'm now zooming in, and as we zoom in, I get dynamically added detail. And the farther you zoom, the more detail you get. So if you want to go all the way down to the airport level, which we'll do in a little bit, you'll be able to see an actual depiction of the runway. And as you zoom out, it kind of dynamically declutters so you don't have to look at everything at once. So I've zoomed in here into a little closer view of the United States because we're going to be doing this planning from just north of Dallas over into Arkansas. We're now, please take a note, in the Maps tab. So if you care to follow along, just tap on Maps. That's where we'll spend a lot of our time. And you can do planning, by the way, in the Flights tab. But I think a large number of people end up doing their planning in the Maps tab. I know that's where I do it. So we're going to go up to our layer selector. So put your attention in the top left, and you can see there's a little layer icon, and right now it says none. So that means we have no layers. So picture back to all the stuff in that guy's desk or the depiction of my paper planning. We're now going to open this up and choose which one of those sets of data that we want to add to our map before we start doing our planning. So we're going to open up that layer selector, and you can see I've highlighted the left column, and in that column are charts and maps that I can choose by tapping. And at the top you can see I've got the aeronautical map that's going to give me airports and other related information. I've also got Jeppesen charts. That will not be there unless you have a Jeppesen subscription. Below that, everybody will have the street map and the aerial map and the sectionals. And then down below that, I have, because I'm on the training team, I've got access to every region set of data that's available. So I've got Canada and Europe and so on. So this may not look like what you have. So we're going to move and just take a quick look at the right column. And this is basically a set of data layers starting with radar in several forms. And below this, I'm just going to set it right there. The way I like to think about it, I learned this from Thomas, is like, hey, if there's a hazard or risk associated with flying, like what's the weather going to be? What's the winds look like? Is there icing? What about turbulence? There's a layer, a data layer available to click on and say, I want to see that layer so I can do some analysis to understand how my route is going to be affected by those hazards and that set of data. All right? So right now we're just going to turn on two layers. We're going to start with the aeronautical layer. And so we tap on that and we can see it turns blue. And then I'm going to tap on the sectional layer and we'll see that, watch the map change. And now that looks like the paper sectional that I demonstrated earlier. So we now have those two sets of data layered on top of each other on the map. We're going to close that. And then for now, we're going to move over to the airports because I've got my map ready, but I know that I'm going to be departing from my home airport. So I've got to go do some work in my pre-flight to understand the airport and start understanding the weather at that airport. So we're going to tap into our airports tab now. The first thing I'm going to do is just orient you to the design and organization of the airports tab. And right now, this is not my home airport. This is Dallas-Fort Worth. And when we click over here, you can see this left sidebar gives us a way to access data on lots of airports, either like it says up here, my favorites. I can look at recents. I can go see airports that I've already put on my map or added to flights. I can do some browsing, but I can basically see I've got a quick synopsis of the elevation, my comms that I need at those airports. So this is a place on the left side where I can go search up airports that are familiar or relevant to me. Now the next thing we're going to look at is the airport summary up at the top. And that is going to give me the name, the address, the location, and I've got a summary of the latest weather. Let's look at this a little closer. I've got just a real quick synopsis of the weather, the elevation, the pattern altitude, and so on, what kind of fuel is available. If we move over a little bit here to the left, I've got all my comms in one place. And we'll come back to those four tabs in the top right there in just a little bit and look at what kind of information and views are available from those tools. Now down at the bottom, we're going to move on to this section here, there's 5 tabs, and right now you see I've got the weather tab highlighted. So this is, and there's one more set of tools up at the top in this search bar across the top. I can make this a favorite by starring it. I can go search for other airports. I've got a couple other icons there that I'm going to touch on. So that's how the airports page is laid out. And now we're going to go step into that search and then go search up my home airport. You can basically just start typing. You don't have to know the ICAO code. You can just type in, oh, what's near, you just type in McKinney or McKinney National or the name of the city that you live in. So in this case, I did put in the ICAO code, which is Kilo Tango Kilo India. And you can see that ForeFlight just gives me some options like, hey, is this what you're looking for? So I'm going to tap in, and there we have the airport page for McKinney National. So next, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into these 5 tabs in the bottom section, and we're going to start with weather and see what type of weather information can I access from right inside this airport page. And the first thing you see there is the METAR tab is highlighted. You can also set ForeFlight so that this can be the default set of data that comes up, like, hey, the minute I go to airports, I want to see the weather tab, not the info tab over here. So in this case, we have our METAR data, we have our TAF data, MOS, some daily, and some winds. And I'm going to walk us through each one of those to see what kind of weather information do I have access to. So when I go flying, I'm going to basically take myself on a tour and start looking at the weather picture that's at McKinney National and in that region. So the METAR, you can see, we have the coded METAR in green. We also have the flight category. In this case, it was VFR, and that was as of 44 minutes ago. And then ForeFlight does us the favor of decoding that so we can see the time, wind, visibility, clouds, the temperature, and the dew point, and so on. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is the TAF. And we're going to get a little bit more regional data. You can see that this is not the TAF for McKinney, it's from Love Field, actually. And that was a couple of hours ago. Tells me it was that the location of that is 25 nautical miles southwest of my airport, so I'm starting to see a little bit of a bigger picture. We've got the coded version of the TAF, and then this is a scrollable column that I can go through and see the forecast over the next 12 hours. And what I love to do is tap into that forecast discussion, because that has a human being who's writing an aviation forecast and also a general short and long-term forecast for the area. And so if I'm looking ahead like I do often, like for next week, I've got a couple of training flights scheduled, and I want to know, okay, what's it going to look like next Wednesday morning when I go out? I can start to get a sense of that with some of this forecast discussion. And now we're going to tap into the MOS. And this is a set of computer-generated models that gives us some additional data that's actually similar. We've got the category, winds, visibility, and so on. And this shows me the source. We do have a MOS at McKinney. So at that point, 31 minutes ago, it gives me the details of that. This is also a time series scrolled forecast. You can scroll that and get a forecast for hours ahead from the MOS. Now we do have a 10-day daily forecast that's given us, the data is coming from the weather company, so we just pull that, and you can see now I've got Friday, in this case it was the 4 days following Friday the 21st, and we can click into one of those. I'm going to click into Monday the 24th when I was looking to consider going flying, and now I pop that up and I get a hour-by-hour forecast, both in a graphical format, but I've got a quick summary at the top that's kind of weather tilted. So I see the flight category, the ceilings, the temperatures, the winds, as of, for that hour of Monday, 8 a.m. back in February. I can tap on each one of those hours, but I can also just have a look in that middle section at kind of what does it look like hour by hour. It's kind of mixed that day, starting out in VFR, moving to NVFR. We even have an hour that's predicted to be IFR. So we go across all those And then down in this bottom section, I can see that's my 10-day forecast kind of in just a simple little box. And what I like too is you can kind of just take a quick look across those colors that are graded across the bottom and be like, hey, what's it looking like for the next week and a half or so? So I use this when I'm trying to book my training flights. Like, I don't want to book it on a day that looks like it's going to be bad weather. I don't want to get canceled. So that's a look at that daily tool. We're going to close that. And now we're going to take a look at our winds data that's available in this weather tab. And there you can see we have another set of time series data that's given to me. I get the altitude in 3,000 foot increments, and then I get the temperatures at each of those altitudes. I get my wind direction and speed at each of those. And so this gives me a chance, and this is also, again, a time series scrollable place where I can go and be like, hey, once I get up in the air, depending on the flight altitude that I'm planning, what is the winds? What do the winds and the temperatures look like? So if you take yourself through these 5 weather tools, you begin to get a reasonably robust sense of the weather to help you make a go or no-go decision. Now, we're going to look at another place in the top right there. There's an icon, and if we tap on that, we're going to get this little sidebar that slides in, and it says airports near you. And you can see I have it selected to give me weather only. So it's another tool to kind of say, hey, what's the weather looking right around me at other airports, right? And so in this case, I'm looking at McKinney and Madison and a little farther south at Rockwall, down to Love Field and Mesquite. My CFI and I use this all the time because we see weather changing. We're like, hey, what's it doing down there? And how can that inform whether we decide to get up in the air and go flying? So we're going to click ahead. But let me back up. Yeah, we're going to take a quick detour because I want to show you another tool where we can get some bigger picture weather data. And that's down here in this imagery tab. So we're going to leave the airport tab for just a moment and go look at the imagery that we have. And so we're going to click on that. And now we see I've got another set of data, and I want to highlight starting over here. All right. We start with a set of national weather data up at the top, and we can go choose to look at kind of the type of forecast you might see on the nightly news, okay? But I'm going to just highlight the rest of these categories over here that I have available. I can pick prog charts. I can look at 6 and 12-hour precipitation forecasts. I can come back and look at convective outlooks. For the continental U.S., I can look at cloud and surface. I can also kind of start zeroing in on my region of the country and click on that and start to see a progressive time series set of data, which we're going to look at now. I'm just going to choose, let me back up and show you what I did. That's the prog chart. I'm just going to give you an example. So we're going to look at prog charts, and I want to look 12 hours ahead. Let's say I'm doing some planning the night before I may fly the first thing in the morning. So I'm going to say, what's it going to be 12 hours from now? And I click in and see that I've got this kind of pressure systems. I've got this kind of precipitation forecast. And down here you see those 2 arrows pointing to the right and to the left. And if you just tap on those will walk you through each one of the time series charts, starting at 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, and so on, right? So it's a great place to kind of zoom out and get a bigger picture view of the weather that I need to be aware of. So we're going to now take a tour of these other tabs here in the middle, starting with info. We'll hop over to runway, procedure, and NOTAMs. But right here in the info section, we're going to tap in and see that I've got frequencies and I've got weather comms availability and phone numbers. So if I want to call and get a person to talk to and get the ASOS broadcast for what's happening with McKinney weather, I can make that phone call. This is going to tell me what do I need to tune up to get my weather before I call for my taxi clearance and take a look at that I also have my clearance, ground. We're not going to tap into all these, but I can tap and immediately get my ground frequency, my tower frequency, right there just with a tap inside the app. Now, when we move over to the runway tab, you can see right in here, because I'm connected to the internet, if you look right below, this is a single runway airport. It happens to be the busiest airport in Texas that has only one runway. And McKinney is saying that we've got winds at 170, 11 knots, and that was 43 minutes ago. And then ForeFlight is going to give me a best wind recommendation for which runway is likely to be used. And of course, I can then go into my planning expecting that runway. And I see that I've got an 11 knot crosswind there, but I also get a lot of runway details. I get the length, the service conditions, the glide slope indicator, if there is one. We've also got the slope, the heading, and the default traffic pattern. So I've got a lot of runway information. I can also tab over and say, tell me about runway 36, and just tab over. I've got instant access to that. So let's take a look next at our procedures tab. Now this is, a bunch of this is for IFR flying with arrival and departure procedures, but let's just highlight that. If you happen to be an IFR flyer, and I've got JEP chart, I can click on the airport and get the takeoff minimums. I can click on that map arrow, put it right on my map. But for the sake of our session here, we'll come back later and look at the procedures tab when we're doing some planning and see how it can help me establish my traffic pattern approach. Right now, obviously we have to go check NOTAMs, so we're going to check it. This is one place that you can look at your NOTAMs. They're scrollable right back here in this column. You can also tap into the filter and look for, maybe the obstacles, but we also have an obstacle layer that you can tap into and scroll all the NOTAMs that are relevant to this airport. We also have, if you happen to have a Jeppesen subscription, that's going to give you NOTAMs that Jeppesen is providing from their data. All right, so that takes us across the bottom of those panels. That's a lot of tools right there inside of our airport, so that as I'm doing my cross-country planning, I can walk through those steps and go, hey, I've got a good sense. And obviously, we want to go do the same thing with our destination airport. I'm not going to repeat that process. You would do the same thing with that airport. But I do want to show you a couple of these tools in the top right. We have a 3D view that is actually one of my favorite tools. It does happen to be available to our premium subscribers, so I want to call that out. But this is a view that's actually scrollable, but I get to see a picture of what does the airport look like while I'm in the air. This is a daytime view. Down here in the bottom right, you see that crescent moon. If I tap on that, I see what does it look like at night. I can come up here and say, give me a look at either of the runways, and it'll spin around. But I can also scroll and tap and zoom, and I can also turn on layers. Like I want to see, what does the traffic look like around that airport? So we're going to see a short video demo of this right here. And you can see I'm just going to be panning around. I can change the angle, I can zoom out, I can zoom in. I've got live traffic in the background. I can rotate around to get a sense of, like, I don't know about y'all, but I've had issues every once in a while being like, I'm in the air, I'm like, oh, where's the airport? And it would be so helpful to have already taken a look at what is the sight picture going to look like while I'm in approach. And this is a look at the short final at one nautical mile and 3 degrees as I'm preparing, to do my final landing at that airport. So this is another great tool. As I said, we're going to close that out and take a look at information available for FBOs at that airport. So when you're flying into a new airport, you're like, well, what services are available? And what's the airport like? Well, this is one place you can start. Tap into the FBOs, and instantly comes up this McKinney Air Center. And if you've never been to McKinney, I certainly invite you to come. It's an awesome FBO, super service, and a great environment. But this tells me some of the services available. I can even tap on that phone number and just call them right from my device. So that's pretty handy. I can come down here and see what other kind of services are available on site. So this is where you can get plenty of, and you can scroll this as well. We're going to close that and come over to this taxiway tool. We'll tap into that, and you can see that we have a diagram. Now we've moved over, just to orient you, we've moved over to the plates tab just for the moment. When we tap on that, we now have the airport diagram. This is an FAA chart. It's another place you can tap on and get NOTAMs. But I've got a diagram that says, hey, what does this airport look like? How am I going to taxi from wherever I might be tied down doing my pre-flight out to the takeoff point? And I can start orienting myself before I get my taxi clearance. And then there's another layer of this tool. If I click into it, it happens to be a labs tool that is available if you turn that feature on in the app. I'm going to kind of move past that step, but this is a way, each one of these name blocks, you say, hey, tap your taxi start location, like where's your airplane? At this point, our airplanes are at the North Tie Down, so I can tap, and I actually put in a user waypoint there. I'm not going to get into that. You should come to our personalized content session that Jeremy does, and he can show you how to do that. But this is where I can tap into the actual the taxi route that I get cleared for and have it sitting there to look at while I'm taxiing my way across the airport. So that's another great tool. We're going to close that and look at this last option in this top right called comments. Right, like I did my cross-country solo a few weeks ago, and I went McKinney to Tyler to Sulphur Springs and back to McKinney, but I've never been to Tyler before. I'm like, well, I want to know what people think. What's this airport like? So I clicked on that, and I get a series of comments. These are people who have actually flown into that airport and taken the time and trouble to introduce people to, hey, here's what I think of the airport. Now at the top, I'm going to call this out because this is one of our first public-facing uses of AI inside the app. This is basically, if you've ever seen those kind of AI summaries on Amazon reviews, it's very similar. It says, hey, what's the summary of what people think of this place? So it's kind of a quick way to go get a sense of what is it like to fly in to McKinney. We're going to close that, and we're going to go back to this one last button at the top with our nearby airports, and you can see I've got a button there that says local weather. All right, this is one more weather place. If I tap into that, it's going to take me right there to the local forecast, back to the same tool that we saw. So if you're in a different place, you want to tap on that button and just get a general sense of what's the local weather, that's another tool you can do it. So those are the tools available here on the airport tab, and that takes us through that segment of this planning. So now we're going to move on to do some route planning, and then we'll make some adjustments to those routes. All right? So if you want to follow along, you can scan this QR code and it will put the route that I'm about to plan into ForeFlight. But let me give you a quick tip. If you have a plan in your flight plan editor at the moment, you need to clear it out. You need to have a blank flight plan editor, and then if you scan this, it'll give you all the waypoints from McKinney to Little Rock that I've already planned, right? So I think, yeah, there's a couple more folks trying to grab that. It'll just help you to not have to be trying to enter things while we're going along here if you're following along on your device. Okay, so let's jump into our planning. We're going to move from our airports tab by adding this airport to the map. And that's what this button does right there. You see that's basically that little map icon. So you're like, hey, this is where I'm going to start my planning. I've already taken a look and taken a tour to get myself organized and oriented to weather and all the other things at that airport. So if I tap on that, here's what happens. Now I have the airport panel over to the side on the map. And that's super useful. It's a smaller form factor, obviously, but it has the same available information. But I now have the map that I set up just a little while ago, and I can look at those two things at the same time. And up here at the top, I've got several options of what do I want to do next. I could say, hey, I want to start a route from wherever I am to this airport, But in this case, we want to add it to the route because it's to be the beginning of our flight. It's not the only place you can do it, but I'm going to go ahead and do that, and we'll click on add to route, and you're like, well, what happened? I don't see anything change. Well, the place we go to do our planning is in the flight plan drawer, right there in the top left where it says FPL. All right, everybody with me there? So you click on that, and what do we see up here? We see this route bubble that I already added for Kilo Tango Kilo India. So that's my departure airport. And we do have a little red circle there, and if that annoys you, like it does me and my OCD, we're gonna resolve that in a little while. But just stay tuned because we can tap into that flight plan just with your finger, and now I've got my pop-up keypad that the iPad says, hey, what do you want to look for next? So we're gonna actually, what I did was type Kilo, that's the ICAO code for Little Rock, and all I have to do now is tap return or the space button, and now I've got my route. So you see both route bubbles, and there's my route, already planned. And if I would have done that by paper, probably would have taken a few more minutes, because I would have had out my plotter, I would have been drawing 2 pencil points and draw a line and do some measuring. But what ForeFlight's already done for me very quickly is given me, let me back up, and it's given me a summary here in this flight plan strip that's in the magenta box here. So you see I have the distance of this flight, I have my estimated time en route, I've already got my ETA planned out, a fuel burn, the summary, I've got a pretty decent tailwind, and the size of my route corridor. So basically, ForeFlight just did everything that I would have done on paper in just a few seconds. A couple of taps with a couple of, obviously this takes a lot longer for me to just explain it. You could have done that in probably 60 seconds or less. Okay? So now we're going to start what I like to call around the horn. This is a workflow that you can do this in any order that you want, but there's 3 options here in the top left, and then there's 3 options over here. You see procedure, routes, and ETD. We have aircraft, performance profile, and altitude, and we're just going to tap through those one at a time to make some adjustments to our route. Okay? Obviously, we've got to choose an aircraft, and this is the default aircraft that I have because I fly mostly 172s, but I've got a number of different aircraft in here, maybe more than you have. This is going to depend on your situation, how many aircraft. You can actually add an aircraft right there with this plus button, but ideally you would have already built that and included it. This is a place where you can go and edit that aircraft. I'm just going to highlight a few things that are really important when it comes to planning. So this is the basic tail number. I've got my type. It's an airplane, single engine land. But if I scroll down, I can see I've got the place where I can make sure I have my best glide speed and ratio. And that'll connect to one of our in-route features that we'll talk about using in just a little bit. So we can continue scrolling down and see I've got a profile for the basic 4-seat arrangement. I've got my basic MTCG numbers in there. You see the blue numbers, those are tappable, so if I need to change those, I can. I've got my basic empty weight, and so on. Now we're gonna, since we've chosen that aircraft, we're now gonna choose, and I'm gonna back up one step, we're gonna step into our performance profile, which the default here was set to 75% full lean mixture. But I've got these other choices for climb, cruise, and descent, and I know I'm probably gonna be leaning it out at 2,400 RPMs, so I'm gonna change my profile by simply tapping right there, right? And you can see now I've got that performance profile, and it defaulted to 6,000 foot altitude at cruise, but I'm gonna make some adjustments to that. So here's where you do that. What you get, you can see here is a table of altitude, the summary tailwinds, the time en route, and my fuel. So time, fuel, and tailwinds, basically at multiple altitudes. And you can see down here, I've got several choices. This is obviously not an IFR flight. It was set to that So I'm going to switch that. We're going east. Basically, we're going east, northeast. So I can keep that on easterly, and I'm going to click over and say, hey, I need VFR options. And you'll watch the altitude options change because I need to fly at a odd level altitude, plus 500. I see it over here. I get a little bit of a fuel advantage from that 6,000. I save, I don't know, half a gallon maybe, but I want to be at 7,500, so I'm going to choose that. You can see that's now my altitude choice, and we're going to come around and keep going around the horn here where I can choose my ETD. So I tap into that. I get my data wheel choices for date and time. And when I was planning this, I was thinking, hey, I want to leave this Sunday at noon, so I'm going to tap on that. And then ForeFlight's going to go pull data that's available for that time. And I'm just going to touch on this briefly because this is really a focus on a VFR flight, but once you get to do IFR flying, this is a route advisor that we can click on, and ForeFlight will give me recommended, ATC cleared, and other airway choices that you can see are built for IFR flying. It gives me a quick ETA and fuel burn. Now that ATC cleared doesn't mean that it's already cleared, it just means it's been cleared in the past, so it might be a route that ATC chooses to clear, but that's all I want to say about that for now. The Procedure Advisor is a place with a VFR flight that has a great tool that I love to use every time I fly. If I'm going to an airport besides my own airport, or even then, we're going to click in and see I've got 4 choices here over in Little Rock. Because I'm connected to the internet once again, I get a best wind recommendation for runway 17. It gives me the length and the width and the surface type of that airport. So I'm going to go ahead and take that recommendation and choose runway 17. Now you can see I get the pattern altitude right there, and then I've got options to say, hey, show me what it's going to be and add this to my route if I go straight in, or perhaps I go right traffic, best side recommendation at 45 degrees. I could also choose teardrop at midfield or direct. I'm going to choose 45 degrees, and you can see that that's now been added with waypoints in my route. So if I like that, I'm simply going to choose that. And what we notice is that is a new route bubble now in my flight planner. And it tells me I'm going to land on I'm planning on 17, and I'm going to be taking a 45-degree right traffic into that airport with the pattern altitude at 1,545 feet. Now, we're going to continue to look at the type of planning I would still be doing on paper, like between here and Little Rock. I can't just hope I get there. I need to go find some visual reference points. So I'd be looking at my map and trying to figure out where do I want to put a waypoint, or what waypoint can I pick. So we're going to zoom in and take a look at, that's me zooming in with two fingers. And it's unlikely that I'm just going to shoot out the side of the airport. So I'm going to go show you how we can pick a custom place to make a waypoint. All right, so the place I'm going to do that is and the tool that I'm going to use is my map ruler. If you want to activate the map ruler, you just take 2 fingers and long press at the same time. The map ruler will appear, and what it gives you, and you can actually extend it, make it whatever size you want, put it between 2 points. You can see I get lots of data on the 2 strips. It's basically giving me time, fuel, and distance. So this is 10 miles away from the McKinney National Center of the airport. It's going to take me 4 minutes and about 1 gallon to get there, and I get the magnetic headings to and from the point that I chose. All right? So this, and the reason I chose that is because there's that city, I think it's called, I should know, it's Farmersville, and it's easy to see. I want to pick something like, hey, I'm flying over Farmersville. Okay, I'm on the right track. So we're going to click into that. Oops. And I've now, when I've long tap, and let's take a look. We see that green button right there. When you take 1 finger and long tap on the map, what you get is this sidebar over here. And what I have available is a location. I get airspaces that I can tap on. I get nearby airports, waypoints, VORs, and so on. But in this case, I just want to tap on it because I want to add it to my route. So we're going to do that, and we're going to see that, look what ForeFlight did. It put it right where I asked it to, which is at the end of my route, which is not the plan I'm looking for. So we're going to say, hey, ForeFlight, we're going to watch this video and watch what happens to the route bubble. I just tap on it and move it over and put it in front of those other 2 waypoints. And now I have a revised flight plan. And this is my first waypoint over to that spot, 10 miles on top of Farmersville. All right, you guys with me? Okay, so let's keep going. We're going to look at adding another waypoint. So there I added my ruler. I'm going to long press on that spot, which is about 12 miles away. And I picked that because there's a railroad track, and I've got this airport, which would be off my right wing. So hey, this is a good visual reference point for me to pick as my next waypoint. So I do that, and you see I get the green button on the screen, which is open up these options. But this time, instead of just tapping on it and adding it to the route, I'm going to click on that More tab. And that's going to give me some additional options. And you can see, I can say, hey, fly me direct there, add it to the route, or I can save it. And why would I save it? Because maybe I want to use that in the future as a user-defined waypoint with a custom name. So we're going to do that now. If you see there's blue text that tells me that I can tap on it and revise it. So I will do that. I'm going to tap on it, and what I've done is called it railroad. I just call it RR_Celeste. Tells me like, hey, that's what I'm looking for. When I get near there, I want to look for the railroad tracks. Off to my right will be the small town of Celeste, and I'm going to add that to my route. Now we can see that's the next waypoint on the way to Little Rock. Okay? Now, let me back up. There's another point that we're going to add, which is over here, and this is just for demonstration purposes. We're going to pick this RNAV waypoint called Wines, and it also is another way to add a waypoint. So we're going to tap on that, and I've got some information that it gives me about that waypoint, and I'm going to add it to the route, and you can see it's now right there inside of my flight plan drawer to continue planning my way over to Little Rock. Now, I'm not going to do for the sake of time, I'm not going to do the rest of the waypoints. Hopefully you have the idea here. This is how you can plot your way from the departure airport to the destination airport. And what I've done is the route that you scanned earlier that's fully planned, I made it one of my favorites. And the way you do that is tap on that star button. And once you tap on that, it's added to your favorites that you can access up here where the star and the little clock button is. It says, hey, show me my saved and my favorite routes. And so there's my KTI to Little Rock. And so I'm simply going to tap on that because, hey, I don't want to have to go through this process every time if this is a route that I'm going to be flying regularly. So I tap on that, and boom, there's all my waypoints in the flight plan drawer added for me, and I've got some adjustments made, the distance, the ETE's updated, my ETA, and so on. I've got that all in there with one tap of my favorite route. Okay, we're going to look at some additional tools here in the map drawer, in our flight plan drawer, and that's with our nav log. We have all those waypoints that we plan through are given to us waypoint by waypoint, and as I'm flying, if I'm connected to ADSP or GPS, I will get this data for time and remaining distance added to each of those waypoints as I'm flying. All right, and we're going to take a look at how I can grab that nav log in another form, but this profile view is another place to go. We can open up, this is a view basically of my climb, cruise, and descent with a number of layers that you can add. You can see I can add airspaces, icing, turbulence, reported turbulence, and so on. to this route, and I can see those depicted. Those bubbles are showing me reported turbulence. Those bubbles are showing me winds, the expected headwinds or tailwinds. So it's a great additional view to see what should I expect as I'm flying this route. Now, right here, this little suitcase or briefcase looking icon that has the red bubble on it, this is where I'd be like packing my flight bag with what do I need to have available in the airplane, because ForeFlight is going to use the data that's along the route to make sure that on my iPad, after I leave the availability of the internet or Wi-Fi, it's going to say, hey, you need to make sure you have all this weather, fuel prices, airport NOTAMs, and I can click on that and start the download, and it will add that data to my device so that it's ready and available inside of ForeFlight. And it'll tell me, hey, you're all packed, ready to go, time to go out to the airplane. We're going to close that up. And we're going to look at one more 3D view feature, which I love because this is another way to preview the route, which you can do either in the first person or the third person. This is a premium level feature. And I'm going to show you just an example of this where we tap on this. We can change the speed, watch it at 1, 2, 5, 20x. And I'm going to see from a third person view or a first person view like this, what does it look like to fly this route? So I've just shown you a snippet of that. I do have layers I can add to see what it's going to look like in a different, and I've got my waypoints toggled on over here to see the route as I fly it. All right, so we're now going to close that out and take this flight plan and send it over to my Flights tab. The Flights tab is available right here, and this Send To icon is how I send this plan over to my Flights tab to have available some additional tools before I go flying. And the way I'm going to do that, I've got options here. I can email it, I could share it with somebody. In this case, I'm going to tap on Flights and send this over to my Flights tab. And I'm just going to highlight two things available. This is where we can get our nav log, and click on that. We do have a half-page format that's now available. Maybe you're a kneeboard person and you want to print it out and have it available sitting there in paper, and so you have a backup, or maybe that's your preference. We're going to tap back and go get a briefing. Obviously, we should be briefing every flight to show that we have looked at the weather and done all of our due diligence to plan. So if I tap on briefing, ForeFlight is going to go retrieve the most recently available weather and other data, and that'll happen as long as you're connected to the internet, and then it will give you this time-stamped briefing. You can show when it was created and the winds data with a time date. And now this is stored on our servers, so you have legal proof that you briefed this flight. Plus you have mental proof that if you scroll down, you can brief the entire flight in this summary format. All right, that takes us through this section. I'm going to spend the next few minutes, or you got about 5 minutes, and I've got a number of highlights I want to get to, but there's just a few en route features and post-flight tools that I want to walk through. So we've done our briefing. We're going to go back to the Maps tab, and notice here when I'm en route, okay, so this we've moved, we're in the air flying, and you can see that we have these distance rings. In this case, you can see the 2 nautical mile and the 4 nautical mile rings and that little green ring. If we zoom in and look at that green ring, this is our glide advisor that says, hey, if you have the unfortunate reality of an engine out situation, where can you expect to be able to glide? And it would be inside of this ring, okay? And you need to have your glide speed and ratio in order for that to be provided. That's why I called that out earlier when we looked at our aircraft. Okay, so those are two great, and we don't see it right here right now. We're going to look at it in a second, but you're going to get a moving map. That is an en route feature, that your plane will be moving along the route as you fly, right? Now, another thing you can do is while you're flying, you go, hey, I don't necessarily want to go over there to Farmersville. Let's take a shortcut. So let's put an option on the screen or pick an airport. And I'm going through this very quickly, I know, because we just have a few minutes. But I could pick a different, like if I have an issue and I want to go direct to that airport, I can just tap on it and say, hey, take me direct to that airport, and the entire route will change real time, right? And then you can fly your way to that airport. I'm going to close that and go, hey, I just want to fly to that next waypoint. If I choose that, add it direct to, you can see now I just kind of took a shortcut. That happens real time. I need to change my heading, and I can fly over to that next waypoint using the moving map while my glide rings are out there. And then we're going to look at turning on the traffic layer. So now it's flying, you can see, and in a second I'm going to add the traffic layer, and then you see the traffic appear. Those emerald right here, you can see those emerald diamonds showing me the traffic around me. And if I keep looking at that, I can tap on each one of those icons and it'll give me detailed information about the aircraft that I'm flying near, okay? So let's take a look forward and just look at some post-flight tools. I've finished my flight, I get on the ground, and what do I want to do next? Well, I need to, at some point, log this flight. So ForeFlight has a digital logbook. It's something you can use alongside your paper logbook. I don't personally use a paper logbook. I started my flying career with ForeFlight. I keep it all digital, but a lot of people do both. We click onto that. I've already tapped into one of the entries just to highlight and show you what that looks like. I can scroll down and get lots of data where I can enter what I need to about the time, the distance, dual receive, did I get any ground instruction? And then we come down here, we get a track log. You can see a 2D track log of my flight. I've got all the other information, where I got it from, and I can actually get a signed logbook entry, either by an Apple Pencil, I can email it. It literally takes me like 90 seconds to do a logbook entry after I've debriefed my flight with my CFI. It's super handy. ForeFlight will back that up on our servers. If you want to have it emailed you once a month, you can opt into that, so you don't have to worry about it disappearing. Now here's another tool that I'm going to have to really breeze through. It's called our track logs. Okay, this is a recording that's taken either by your iPad, or if you have a Sentry device, you can do that. I've picked a flight here. I've got a summary of my altitude and ground speeds, and it shows the route. Looks like I was doing some practice and a few laps in the pattern on that day. I can also import data to the track log. You also have a 3D view of the track log. It looks like we saw earlier. I'm going to kind of breeze through that. It gives you a replay of the flight that you flew, so it's a great chance to go review, see how did I do flying and where can I improve that. I can send this also to a couple places, and that is by building a KML file. I can use that in an app called Cloud. That's what I've been using. We bought that company a number of years ago. But I'm going to skip ahead because I want to show you something that's new, and you should come to our booth to see this in more detail. Our track log feature has been, we've taken the engine inside of Cloud, which gives us analytics and data to analyze all segments of your flight and get a score, so you can debrief how did you do flying, where there are possible improvements. I'm really going to go through this probably too quickly. Those are flights that each have a score that's kind of color-coded, like green is great, yellow, maybe we got some room for improvement. Down here is where I would click on that debrief button for this flight that I flew, and we get some more details. Again, I'm going fairly quickly through this, but if, let's say like me, I need help with my steep turns, we're gonna look at that real quick. There's a yellow one that's like, well, that one wasn't great, but what happened, right? You don't want to just be like, well, do better next time. Let's go look at the data and see how we might compare that to one that you did really well. If you'd like to see a demo again, come see us in the booth. That takes us to the end of our content, and I have 60 seconds of time. So I've already touched on this, what's new. Come see dynamic procedures if you haven't. We'd love to give you a demo in our booth. We will also help you learn how to choose an iPad. I'm going to skip through this so we can land the plane and invite you to come see us in the booth. My colleagues Thomas and Jeremy are here. If you have questions, we'll be hanging around for the next few minutes. I need to get out of the way for our next speaker. We really appreciate you trusting us with your time, and we wish you safe flying and enjoy flying with ForeFlight.